free agency's open, trades are coming, we answer all of your questions.
Gets there, knocks it down to the front. He gets it back. Goldie. Some poetry in slow motion from Goldie to Lucky. Don't you want to be him? He's got 9.
Welcome back to Further North, everybody. Trades, free agency, it's all happening. It's that time of year. It's the time of year when we all think everything's going to be okay, but deep down we know it's not. And that is a sense of comfort that we need to grab onto in the North Melbourne world. And the person that's going to help me grab onto that feeling of security, even though deep down we're really scared, is Joel. Joel the Mole's back, the number one guy when it comes to trades, free agency in the North Melbourne world. Do you get paid to break all the news and all the opinions, mate? No, but you do it anyway. That's why you're here.
No, just for the passion, mate, just for the passion. No, I do love... Well, this time of year particularly is always a very interesting time of year, seeing where players are going and what the player movement is. Obviously, I've got an eye towards the draft, but there's a few interesting things happening for us at this time, and looking forward to sort of seeing what people are asking and what they're thinking at the moment. Well,
have we got plenty of opinions for you, mate? I put it out in the socials, Facebook, Instagram, Further North Pod. You guys know where it is. And everyone's going to ask you some questions, mate, because you're the guru. I'm not. I'm here to host. I'm here to direct. But you're the brain, as we know. Thank you to everyone tuning into the pod as well. Apple and Spotify, please, a 5-star review would be very, very nice. I like reading through those. It helps me get up there in the algorithms. And if you're on YouTube, please subscribe. And put your thoughts below on all the things we're about to talk about. If you've got more questions, leave them down there as well. And maybe we can go through and pick some of those for a new episode. But look, there's always so much to talk about. I've screenshotted the best from Instagram and Facebook. There was so many. I'm so sorry if we don't get to your question. There's a lot of people asking similar questions. I just picked one out of those. So if you didn't get in, I do apologize. But keep getting involved because one day your question will be on Further North. I remember names. I remember little profile pictures and things like that. And I'm like, oh, that person hasn't been on before. Let's give them a crack. So let's get straight into it because there's a bit to get through here. All right, we're going to go straight to Instagram. Harley Harbour says, why doesn't anyone want to come to North? Now, I think this is kind of how I've been feeling a little bit recently. Tyler Young requests to go to West Coast, which I'm going to assume he's from WA because if you're not and you're requesting to go there, I would question a lot of decisions you'd make in your entire life. But hey, that's fine. Starcevic is going to go over there, and it's making me feel a little bit like, I know we're not the sexiest club ever, and I know we're fans and we think, oh, how good would it be to come and play with this young core? Are we that unattractive to people? Like, paint me a word picture of realism here. Why does no one seem to be wanting to come to North? No one's requesting us.
In the short, you are correct, sadly. We're not the attractive team at the moment. There wouldn't be many. West Coast will always have a go-home factor at the moment. We're not in the worst situation of the clubs. You've got clubs like Essendon where everyone's jumping off at the moment, which is a worse situation than ours. But by the same token, we're not an attractive prospect. My still stance on this is going to be the same, which is we've got the talent on the list already. We will smartly target, hopefully, a few players that can be those fringe players. Like, as I said, the club that I would look to, for an example, was Hawthorn when they were down the bottom. The two players they targeted, which looked like a really failed off-season for them, was a Chol and a D'Ambrosio. No one in looking at that in the off-season thought that was anything special. And both of those guys have reckoned very heavily in their ascent up the ladder. For us, if we get a couple of players here and there, some players that can be bigger players, bigger role players on our side, that's going to be really important. And the thing that we want to see next year, and we saw it a bit at the end of this year, which might, potentially get a couple of players to us, is that jump where a player can literally look at it and go, I can fit into this list now. I can see where we're going to be. They're playing an exciting brand. All these guys are young and coming up. That's what we want to get to by the end of next season. This off-season, I said, there's not, to be honest, I don't think even the big name ones, there's not a lot out there for us. The ones I'd like is a Butts. Sounds like he's probably staying at Adelaide by the sound of it. Tyler Young, he's 27 with 2 knee recos. I would like to get him to help build that stock, but, he's not really anything to write home about by the same token. That's the kind of things that, they're the players that we can unfortunately be in the pool with at the moment. Let's work towards the big ones next season. Let's have a really good season. Let's develop those guys that are on our list at the moment.
Fair enough. Because, and there's some more questions coming up about this, but like, I don't think we can expect crazy things. It's not going to be like last off season. And I know we didn't get any absolute game changes on paper, but we got some bigger names in Parkers and Darlings and Daniels. That's not going to be this off season. So I think you're totally right. They're the sort of players that we've got to target. We've got a few questions about them coming up. One I'm going to go to here from Facebook from Brighton Isles. What's your advice to, in quotation, stay calm and carry on for all the North fans whinging and panicking over the trade period? So you've already laid it out a little bit there, but what's your advice to people who might be freaking out a little bit about this? Do you see some of the players that we're targeting as players that are going to get us to where we want to be next year, knowing the expectation that's out there from a lot of North fans? Is it right to just trust the process here, or are we right to not panic, but worry a little bit?
To be honest, I'm not worried this off-season at all. Like, the keep calm part for me is, and I'll say it again, we've got the talent on our list. Like, that midfield group is very deep. Foss, and Kirch next year, we're going to be having bigger roles. Our forward line, if you write it down and look at it, it's actually tricky to see how a lot of our players fit in, particularly forward in that. Backline is obviously been an area of concern, and you can see that's where we've been trying to recruit your Starceviches, your Maynards, your Youngs, your Butts, all these guys are the ones that we're going after. Obviously, probably I'm guessing there'll be questions about Sarong and Mitchell coming up. Those two, there's been names attached to us, and they're all in that same position. They're all off that back. They're all defenders first as well. I mean, even a Windhager, it's the same. And I think they're smart targets by the club. Obviously, unfortunately, haven't landed them, but I think it shows you what we think we need. We've also, I think there's still upside in that area that we need to future-proof against, unfortunately. You can see, obviously, Goda and Archer, obviously they have real potential to be in our best 22 at the start of next year, but we're really concerned about their bodies. And there's good reason for that. But, if we can get them guys fit. Chom was the same. Chom, there was major concerns over his body. And the last 2 years, I think he's been really reliable. So I'm not as concerned. I think when you see those sides and you look at that Brisbane midfield, for example, with the exception of an Ashcroft, who's an incredible star, a lot of those guys are like your Dunkley, your Neil, your McCluggage. They're 25, 26. Our midfield group core, with the exception of Parker and obviously moving Jai out now, are, you look at a Wardlaw, he's like 20. You're looking at Tom Powell, he's like 22, I think he is. You're looking at LDU, who's 24 now. You get to your best in your mid-20s, and these guys are either a fair whack off or getting towards it. We've got the talent there. Let's just trust the process in this situation. If we get a good key back or a good back along the way in this off-season, it'll be really important to us. But I think there's a lot to look forward to. Our development's not going to come from those recruits at the moment. It's going to come from the group that we have on the field.
I think that's fair enough. Kai McPherson on Facebook. How many players do you expect us to get in from other clubs this off-season? So we'll talk about individuals soon. Yes, you're right. There are some questions coming up about specific players, but how many players do you reckon North are going to try and target? Do you reckon it feels like maybe one or two is what to expect? Do you think North are going to go a little bit bigger than that? Should we expect any more, or do you think 1 to 2 players is sort of realistic for this off-season?
Yet again, it's going to be opportunity meets what the offers are as well. Obviously, we've brought one in already, being Spargo. We're obviously heavily tied to Jai Sarong, and Mitchell we're starting to get a bit tied to, not as much by the media, more so by media-adjacent people, or not by the mainstream media. Those, I think, you might see those. The other question that I'll sort of say is coming into the actual draft, a few free agents and a few people that have been delisted you might see getting picked up. The draft isn't very deep this year, so you might see a couple of those guys. And I think there's a few players being floated around that we might potentially look at. I won't go into too much details of those ones just yet, but I think there's chance coming into the draft that you'll see a few of those names that have been attached to other clubs and just seeing what we can do with them. So I'd probably say, everything going well, we might have 2-3 players from other clubs by the end of the free agency period, and maybe another one by the draft.
Okay. Rain_Stevens22 on Instagram. Thank you for your question. Will we get Jai Sarong? Give us a yes or no, Jai. I need you to pick this. You've already picked us for the 8 next year. You've locked that in. Can you lock Jai Sarong into North Melbourne?
I'll say yes. Okay. I reckon he's coming to us. I think there's, obviously Fremantle's put their hat into the ring, but I think there's more reason for him to stay home. It's not like their family's from over there. Their family's from here. I think there's a role really cut out for him. I think Little John's going to have a real impact on this. I reckon Sarong will come to us. I'll call that now. That being said, you could always be wrong on these. But given the option, I think yes. I think he ends up with us. It's a situation that seems to make sense for him, tends to make sense for us. And we'll see how he goes with us. Obviously, he couldn't break into their best, Hawthorn's best 22. That being said, he has talent, obviously, and he's behind a very, very good group of people. And he's well praised by a lot of the senior players there. So all the above, and he'll come very, very cheap. It'll be just a bit of a watch for us, but I reckon he comes to us is my gut feel.
Okay. So look, hypothetically, let's say he does come. A couple of questions here. Well, actually, it's from the same user, so don't worry about that. Jara Aiken on Instagram, he says 2 things. Is it possible to fit Archer, Hardiman, McDonald, Sarong in the back 7? And what is our back 7 if we get Sarong? So what would you be looking at for 7 defenders on the team sheet? What do you reckon that sort of says next year? Do you reckon it's possible?
It is possible. I think he's more of an intercept defender, so you might end up with a situation of my real hope this offseason is that we get a big jump from Dawson. I'm not convinced it happens, personally. I think he's probably more a year or 2 away still. So I would say the start of the year, you'll end up with probably a Chom, Logue, or Pink, and maybe a Sarong in that 3rd position. Then you'd have you've got to also count Daniel into that role as well, which he'll always play. So it'll be like a Daniel. I think Archer is the lockdown. I think Hardiman may have earned his spot. So Almac, yet again, might be at risk. And then Goda, it's going to come down to his body. If Goda's body's right, potentially he's at 4 or 3 on us. And Sarong potentially play on the wing, which he was playing a lot of in the back end. So as I said, it is not as easy, that back group, as we think it is to break into.
Yeah.
I think there is issue. The issue for me is we need another key back, which is why I'm so wanting for Dawson to come through. I don't think he'll be ready by the start of next year, but hopefully by the end of next year he locks himself into that key stopper role. But I can see Sarong, you bring him across, you're going to play him, is my gut feel. He'll be a wing/defender and / a bit more versatile, I think. So I'd see him on the field, but if you write out our best 22, it actually is really tough to figure out who goes where. And I do that basically every other week to a few mates on the old WhatsApps and on the old chat groups. It's actually a really tricky thing to do. And I would love to have that problem of too many talented players and fit players to bring in. So let's hope for that.
Yeah, well, that's the ultimate, isn't it? Because then you can look at Foss off the halfback as well. If McKercher stays down there, hopefully there's no more Sheasel down there and he's a midfielder. But you never know as well. There's players there that, need your man Darcy Tucker as well, of course, bounding off that halfback line. So, look, it's there's plenty down there. And yeah, like an Elmac might have to fight for his spot. Archer's body is a question, but if he's there, is he a lock down there? Ideally, the 3 key defenders down there for us would be Chom, Will Dawson, and Sarong if he comes across. But once again, I know it's easy to write off Griffin Logue right now, but he's a good player. He's a very good player. And with a preseason, with a clean injury bill, I think he can be a really key part of this team. Toby Pink's form was fantastic. He absolutely deserves to play as well. And then you've got a Whitlock, which, even though I've been very adamant he should play forward with Dawson being that defender, and I will always say that, you never know. I'm not 100% sure which end of the field he ends up on anyway. So the depth has never been the problem. It's the quality of top end we've got to play with our best 22. And the talent is there, like you've said. I think Dawson's got a very high potential. We know Chom is a good player. Sarong, Griffin Logue, I think still can offer something to this club. Those guys are good players, but you can't play all of them all the time or they're injured, and that's when you get a bit mix and match. So that's why we've moved on from Callan Dawson's and things like that. And if you replace a Callan Dawson with a Sarong, you've just upgraded your backline. Aiden Core probably has 1 year left in him, right? Is he going to play? You know what? Probably, mate. With how Clarko goes and that sort of stuff. Even though I think if we're all humming very well and we're developing right, he probably shouldn't play and be more of a leader down there. But look, we've got options, and that's the thing. We don't. If Pink, Logue, or Core comes in, or Whitlock on top of the three we named ideally, I still don't think that's a bad thing. You know what I mean? Or it's better we've had in the past anyway.
I know 1,000%. And like for me, like obviously there's old one, big size key stopper, which is Dawson. I think really can be that role, which is why I like Butt so much, as well as the idea of a key size big stopper, because it just frees Chom and whoever the other larger defender, like Logan Pinker in that role at the moment, to be able to come across and intercept and switch off players. And then like the smaller defender, like that's why Butterick was quite appealing to me as a player. He's a bit undersized. He was 179, but his defensive nous was really, really strong. He did play 22 games last year. He did come also off, yet again, Butterick also came off a couple of knees, I think his was. But his defensive nous, and that's where he wanted to play his defense, was really high. And those smaller guys we can struggle with sometimes, especially when Archer's just a bit slow for them, but Hardeman, I'm hoping, sort of fits into that spot. But the defensive issues for me don't necessarily, like the defenders can improve, but it's the structures up the field for me still.
Yeah,
like
100%.
It's the one. So like if we can teach our midfielders to defend and hold that zone, or just be a bit more clean, you will see those scores against dropping. We can win it out of the centre. We can get the ball forward. We know this. It's when they get the ball outside of that and they bring it through, they can just absolutely walk it through. Hopefully Little John has a lot to say about that, and hopefully the strategy and the game plan as a whole can start to really be, well worked by us now.
And Barlow as well, because Barlow's been a good midfielder in his career. He's played in good midfields. Hopefully he can bring a little bit of that to our team as well. We've talked about this a lot throughout the year, and I'll always credit Marnie on bringing this up first and foremost, is, that midfield coaching change could be the biggest thing that happens to us in this offseason, because we know how talented, like you've pointed out, how talented and deep and still young that midfield is, how balanced it on paper it can be with different types of players who all have elite attributes. But it just didn't click last year. There was something about it that LDU's not firing completely. He was good, Shiza was good, but they weren't at their absolute best. And I really, really hope Barlow can bring that out of them. I mean, he's a great development coach. He won some award for being a development coach. Clearly that means he can get into players and really make them work and give you systems and structures that make you be a better footballer. Let's hope he can do that to our midfield group. But look, speaking of the cluster that it is down in the back line, Noah Wiggins on Facebook, thoughts on Seamus Mitchell. Won't defend, but could easily take Colby's spot, allowing him to get up the ground. If you think he's ready for that, or hypothetically play on a wing. I've heard some different things about Seamus Mitchell. I've heard he's very annoying to play on in training down in the back line, but I don't know if that was just a rumour going around. I'm not going to pretend I know much about him. What are your thoughts on Seamus Mitchell? Do you see him as that rebounder, or does he have the ability to lock a player down, almost like we were trying to get a Budrick for?
Yeah, I view him, to be honest, I tend to view him more as that lockdown. I don't see him running off as well, personally. I was watching a few of his highlights, particularly, and watching a bit more of him as we've been getting closer, and there's been a bit of rumours attached to him. I don't view his kicking as particularly either penetrating or accurate. And I think if you're running out of the half-back line, you really need that. My hope for him would be for those small forwards that can torch us a little bit. We've been torched in the past by like a Waitman. We've been torched in the past by
Cozzy.
Bobby Hill, Cozzy, those guys. We just don't have people that, like, one thing that Geelong's done exceptionally well and not overly talked about as much as it probably should be is some of their players, Ocean Mullen I think is a great example of it, where they sit on a player and just shut them out of a game. And their job isn't, we've got so many players that have an ability to get the ball and get the ball moving and do all these really good things. But team balance, part of it is people that can just sit there and stop someone. And I think we lack that ability in our back line, particularly with the small forwards. I don't think it's as bad with the key forwards, and I think it's a lot because of the movement up the field. But if we can get people that can do that, and I think Mitchell could potentially cover that role for us. Almost like, when we brought in, JK, like obviously, his goal kicking wasn't there, but he sat in that best 22 all season and had the ability to, you knew exactly what you were getting from every week. And that was very helpful for us in that forward line, the pressure that he brought. So hopefully we can get to someone in reverse and a Mitchell that can do that in defense for us. Yet again, struggle to see how he fits in at the moment, but I prefer to have that as an asset that, you can bring in for the right moments or you can use then not.
It's sort of him and Archer would battle that out though, right? Like you would hope that Archer maybe gets the start, and then if his hamstrings made a Bible paper, mate, so if when he inevitably gets an injury through the season or overtrains himself in the preseason, do you think like those two would be interchangeable with a McDonald could sort of back it up, or do you see them as different players?
I think Archer, the one type of player he struggled to was the zippy small forward, because I don't think he had as much pace personally. I think he was strong overhead. He was good coming off his player and intercepting, and he was a mongrel that could hit hard. But I think, I remember Bobby Hill absolutely torched him in that Collingwood game, sadly. But he could beat a Fritsch, which is someone that's not as pacey but strong overhead. It's horses for courses. I'm not sure they exactly match up. And I think we've still struggled with someone who does Watson during the year. He absolutely torched us. And I don't think Archer can defend a Watson well. He can defend him in the air, but when the ball hits the ground, you just don't have anyone with the pace. I'm not sure Mitchell can defend Watson well because he's so good at what he does. But we need someone who's in that mould. And I think Mitchell's got the pace, and I think he's got the air. He's 181, I think he is, centimetres. So I think he's got the ability to do that more than he does run off the halfback. I think I'll still be leaving that with your Daniels and Joe. I can't see Kirch not playing off. I'd like to see him up the field, but I can't see him not necessarily playing that role either with the value of it. Or him or Foss can't. Foss and Daniel won't be the three other defenders off our back line this season.
Yeah, and look, let's hope not. I want Colby in the guts, as much as everybody else does, we just...
Probably a little bit more.
Well, come on, mate, I am a little bit biased towards Colby McKercher, but I just think he's so unique, and that guy around that contest, I know there's questions over his tackling ability. He's done it against the Tigers. It was only one game, I understand that, but he's clearly got it in him. Another year in the gym, put a bit of size on. I think he'd be such an elite player out of the midfield. We'll try and integrate Taron Thomas in there, right? And no one was complaining about the size on him, and Colby can be that plus more, I think. So, look, it'll be interesting to see that mix. Finn O'Sullivan, I'm still trying to think about exactly what type of player he can be in the middle as well, because, especially when you talked to me about him before we drafted him, Taron Thomas was an example of maybe with a player that we going to replace Taron with a Finn O'Sullivan to try and take that role. But I see Finn O'Sullivan has got a little bit more defensive ability. He's a bigger body, and he seems like he can do that, but have the defensive side. And there's something about him that I think he could be an absolutely gun two-way midfielder.
I could see him almost as a Dunkley type, when he puts on size. He's so smart and so good defensively. He was so reliable. He very rarely was losing one-on-one contests in that back line. And he actually saved a lot of goals, I think, in that back line. But then you see him with ball in hand, and he's just so creative, and he can make things out of a lot. He would either be tackled getting the ball, but he was good enough to sort of keep it in and not let it spill to the outside, or he would step around people, and there was no he wasn't getting caught.
Strong hips, doesn't get tackled, yeah.
And you didn't even see the best of his game, which he's got such a strong overhead mark that we saw patches of it, but that's a real strength. When he gets into the midfield, he's going to be we talked about Windhager, and I like Windhager a lot, and I would like him in our midfield. Foss, in a few years, he's going to have that defensive, he's got that defensive aspect already. He's just such a smart footballer. I think he's really been underrated this year, not just by North, but by the wider footy public for how good he's just been. It's the role that he was playing that people won't watch as much, but he has been he's got the footy knowledge of a fourth year, fifth year player already. And he's I can't rave enough about him, I think. And he was someone that I was a bit iffy about at the time, but everything I saw from him, I think, was just exactly what I wanted. I think he's going to be a star.
So let's talk about what's his first name? Someone Little John? I never remember this.
David, I think it is David Littlejohn. I just remember the last name because it just reminds me.
Yeah,
of
because it's so interesting. Mr. Littlejohn, who's come over from Box Hill to be a strategy coach and like a game plan sort of analysis coach for us. What sort of impact do you think he's going to have on our off season? Because obviously the links with Sarong and Mitchell are pretty strong. They're probably the two that are linked to us the most right now. How big of a role do you think Littlejohn will play in those deals getting done and other things in our off-season? I mean, we can obviously talk about what he'll bring on match day and through the weeks, but right now in the off-season, what do you reckon he can bring to us?
Everyone, I've repeated it ad nauseum and I'll keep repeating it. Our structures that we've got from when the ball gets turned over are horrendous, and we get moved through we just get moved through way too easily, and people can score on us way too easily. What I would love to see from him is he's there partly for development, and I think I would really love a fresh voice for Dersma, and I'd really love a fresh voice for a few of those players, and the structures and defensive structures. If we can fix up our defense like 5%, 10%, we will win 11 plus games. We've got enough power. Like at the stoppages, we don't get beaten at stoppages. Like if we get beaten at stoppages, we lose games. That's the Geelong game. That's the Hawthorn game. That's the Carlton game. When we get beaten at stoppages, that's the result. When we don't get beaten at stoppages, we can either lose by 10 goals or we can win or we can be close. And it's like there's that space there where we're so competitive for so long because we can win those. But the defence always will let us down at the moment. We need to address that, and I'm hoping that that's something that Littlejohn will. Hawthorn's system is incredible. Like their pressure at the stop, like we want to do pressure at the stoppages, but they're getting it out way too easily. I'm hoping that I'm hoping that's the biggest area he affects because I haven't seen improvement in that area, or haven't seen big improvement in that area for years now, for a number of years, for the Clarko era. So I'm hoping that I've seen improvement in other places, just not that space.
I believe it's Zane Littlejohn as well.
Zane,
so let's just remember. Well, yeah, he's brought in for Dersma, which is exclusively for Dersma. And speaking of Dersma, mate, this is a fantastic segue. C.J.Sutton on Instagram. Who do we want to target from Essendon for Dersma? I don't want him to go, but I wouldn't say no to a caddy. Now, we all wouldn't say no to caddy. But the realistic chance of that happening is slim to none. I don't feel like, and I think Tom Morris reported that Dersma's not going to go. Well, that's the gut feel, and it's strongly likely that he's not going to go anywhere. Hypothetically, we've talked about this a little bit before, but do you see anyone on the Bombers in a trade that you would want to target for Dersma if Dersma did want to go to the Bombers?
There would only be a few. They're not a list that's particularly appealing to me. I don't think there's a lot of players that
couldn't pick much worse, to be honest.
Couldn't pick much worse. I mean, none of these would be direct shots. I mean, Caddy's obviously who would have won. I wouldn't hate the concept of a Kako, but I'm not that huge on him yet.
I'd take him absolutely, just because of the fit.
Yeah, I know I'm not that huge on him yet, but Zach Reid I would absolutely take, even with all of his injuries, and I think that would be closer to the moment, but Essendon won't let him go, absolutely not. And Ash McGrath I really like from them. But outside of that, there's not a huge amount of players. Like Nick Martin, I like him a lot, and he's a far better player than Dersma, obviously. But it just doesn't make sense for me with us. They're the kind of players I look at. Not Ben Mackay.
Well, we did have a couple of people in the comments saying a straight swap for Ben Mackay, which was incredibly funny. But,
and I think, just to get back onto Durs, I guess, as well, the big thing with him at the moment, it seems there's a difference between what North wants and what Essendon's willing to give. I'm happy with North's position. It seems like we would want nothing less than a top 10 and buy a good top 10 for it, because I just don't see the players being the match. And Essendon, I think, would probably – Beveridge and Toomey talked a bit about and suggested that there might be a top 10 offer for him. But if it's like pick 8, that gets blown out. And there's honestly, people sometimes forget how talented Dersma actually is. His upside is actually really high. There's moments in games and there's passages. Watch the VFL replay against Carlton with some of the stuff he was doing in that game. He does have all this talent. It's just not getting put on the field, whether that's effort, or whether that's confidence, whether that's structure. I'm not sure what it is, but there is I wouldn't let him go for anything less than drafting a player for me. I'd be looking at the players that would be drafting, which would be like a Xavier Taylor, which is a lanky, good defender, I think a very good defender, and a Farrow, who's a really tall wing / off halfback. If we're not getting a player like that, like the rest of them, they can keep them. They can take those players. I'm willing to put my eggs in the Zane Dersma bucket in that situation.
Okay. Let's go to Malik Aganovic, I think a client of mine at the barbershop as well. Hopefully I've got the right Malik there. I don't know how many Maliks there are out there that are North fans, but hey, Malik, if it is you out there, come in for a haircut soon, mate. If not, thank you, Malik, for asking this question. If we don't, and I like this question, I think it's a really good discussion point. If we don't get a high/mid-grade defender over the trade period, should we review our recruiting team?
No, I mean, like, yet again, it's sort of, I think I wouldn't review the recruiting team. The recruiting team has gotten the right targets. I think, I mean, as we said at the start of the show, really, we're not that attractive a place to come to at the moment. Like, when you've got Dogs or North as Connor Butterick, like, you've got, a team that's pushing the, top 8. They're really not that far off. They've got, a really good core there. Or you've got, to potentially build up with a younger group that hasn't shown enough yet to be, a deep finals team. And you're coming from a team that won their first final for, the first ever time in their club history. So, I mean, I don't blame them as much. I think the targets have actually been good targets. I think they've been the right targets. And they've put big money towards them. So not necessarily the recruiting team yet. Always say yet, but not necessarily the recruiting team yet. I think if we don't get anyone this offseason, I'm not that stressed as that I think we've got the talents on the list. It's just going to be, and you can see who we're targeting, what we're targeting. I wouldn't be too upset. I'm not blaming them just yet for anything. I don't think we've done anything too wrong with it.
Yeah, I would sort of back that a little bit too. I think in the future, if this continues, if the club moves up the ladder a bit, then I would ask some questions. I made a video earlier in the year about how I think Brady Rawlings, even though he's done some things that we look at and go, what are you doing, mate? There's some other ones in there that everyone forgets that he did as well. And this isn't about Brady Rawlings specifically here, but this is about, as a recruiting team in general, if we pick a Sheasel and he turns into a generational player, we go, oh, it was pick 3, mate, or pick 2, whatever it was. Like, that is what it is. No. How many players up that end of the draft haven't turned into anything? But he does that and we forget it, but he does one bad thing and we absolutely roast him and drag him through the coals. So, it's a tough position to be in. And I do agree with you. I think we're targeting smart players at the moment, and there's a clear emphasis. They know it's the defensive side of the game, right? But let's see how it goes, because you can't just go and get players, and especially for North. If we finish around a 12th next year or something like that, 10th to 12th-ish, I think that, lock the top 8 from you, Joel, as were your words. Then we're going to be able to get Buddy Franklin-esque type players across the line. But until then, let's just hold out and hope Jai Sarong turns into the greatest defender that we've ever seen. Big Aiden Core on Instagram.
Ooh.
Well, a fantastic name. I wonder if they'll have to change the handle after next season. Anyway, realistic trade package, for Gold Coast's pick 7.
What would it be? They would want to make up points in the bare minimum. For which pick did they say? Pick 7, was it?
Pick 7.
Yeah, they'd want to have points in the bare minimum, so it'd probably be both of our second rounders, maybe a 4th. And then that's assuming that they just want the points, and then they'll want something into next year, which will probably be a future second. So I would say the 3 seconds, I wouldn't trade our future first for it. If we were trading our future first, I'd want a package from them, which they're not going to do because they need the points too much. But the big focus is going to be they need the points, and they need they'll need the points this year. And you would want us, if we sweeten away and something in from next year, then they'll look at it. But I don't think we're not in a bad position too, because the way they changed the point scoring, but our 2 picks are roughly worth that in points value at the moment.
Is it that you can only use 2 picks to get the points now or something like that? Or have I got that wrong?
Not at the moment, but there is, I think they are looking at that kind of thing for the future, which is,
or is that just next year? How have they changed the points going into this draft?
Nothing for this draft. They haven't changed it. It's the next draft. Because, in fairness to the clubs, and even though I don't, I think this has been a really compromise draft, and it's really horrendous the way they've done it. I think for next draft, I think that the system for the next draft is going to be a lot more punishing for the clubs to do it. So you might see, well, Carlton is trading out of their pick definitely as well, by the way. So, next year's picks will be a bit more appealing for them as well. So that's, I think we're sort of looking at.
Do you think would you do that? Would you try and trade up in this draft, or you wouldn't bother because of the compromised, shallow draft that it is?
I would trade up to a certain point. Like, yet again, you got to look at the players that should be targeting. Like, Gold Coast pick 7, you're going to get some very good players, or you're going to get some good players. Our pick, we're really going to be speculative where we are. That's just the fact of it. I think any pick, like if we only moved up to, a pick between 10 and 20, like I think, or between 10 and 15, you wouldn't move that much further down. Like that, I think you're very speculative at that point as well in this draft. I think you're fairly speculative at that point. So I wouldn't be moving, like, unless we get into the top 10, I wouldn't be trying to move up too far.
And I think another point we'll make here as well is that it's rumoured now that Hawthorn is trying to trade the pick that not Hawthorn, sorry, Richmond's trying to trade the pick that we gave to them or traded for them last year, which I think is so interesting because, we've had many discussions about this, and I'm on a bandwagon of it's not as bad of a trade as it's perceived on the surface. And it's so interesting because I think the rumor of them trying to trade out of this draft into the next one really validates what I've been trying to say, and not necessarily just directed at you there at all, but it's I've had a lot of discussions with people about this, and the amount of people that have come into the barbershop and just been like, mate, how'd you trade pick 3 for 27? That's ridiculous. I'm like, so much context in there that on the surface doesn't come through. And the fact that we did that trade and now they're looking to move it, was North maybe a little bit smarter in looking at the draft and looking at drafts in the future well, I know it sounds crazy, but, we clearly knew it was a compromised draft. There's going to be a lot of free agents moving this season more than ever that are going to get those top picks. There's a lot of money flying around the league and the shallow talent pool. We were probably just a little bit smarter in that aspect. Maybe we scouted the draft a little bit better. And, Richmond accepting that on the surface looks like they fleeced us. But if they're already trying to trade it, mate, there's got to be some sort of truth in the story I've cooked up here, the way I feel like it played out, Yeah,
well, Richmond, by the sound of it, Richmond wants to move back and get into next year's first round as well. Next year's draft is looking far better than this draft, I think.
And that's the last draft before Tassie too, I think.
It is the last draft before Tassie. I sort of made a mistake, I think, and thought it was next year, but it's not. It's definitely the year after.
Oh, I know, mate. The comments let us know. Don't worry about
that. Which is fair. Which is fair. It's next year's draft I like. Look, there's a few plays that we might, the father-sons potentially in there as well for us. So, but I don't think they'll go that high. That's a concern for me. Or as in where our first pick will be unless we play deeper finals, I guess. Or when we play deeper finals, it might be coming to vogue. But no, I mean, this, I'll say that this draft, for me personally, this draft, there's no one that I look at and think they're as much of a lock as the last few years. You look at the top end of Foss, my concern with Foss was injuries, not talent. Layla, it was injuries, not talent. You looked at, the last ones, McKercher was such a good player immediately and he was doing special things. For me personally, and I mean, obviously this is all just opinion, the top end of this draft, the players that we would be vying for and bidding for, there's no clear number 3 at the moment in this draft for me. There's no clear number 4. Richmond, I don't think Richmond knows who they'll be taking at the moment, any of those picks, if they had it. There's no obvious targets. It's pretty just, for me. There's no one that's screaming special yet for me. Maybe CDT, but that's about it. But we wouldn't have got him anyway.
Yeah. A couple of questions here that sort of lead on from this draft chat. John Bauer on Facebook, 2027, a draft to trade out of now or a chance for bargain basement prices as others opt out? And then Bright Niles says, thoughts on trading out of this year's draft and into the 2026 draft, I'm assuming means 20 or the next draft, to help get our potential father-son academy players in McCartney, Grant and Harris. Do you reckon we must be, but are we looking at those? I know McCartney can pick the Giants Academy too.
Sydney.
Oh, Sydney, sorry. And I'm assuming he'll do that just after sort of feels like the Blakey thing
Hopefully
again.
Not.
And you've got Grant and Harris there as well. Do you think with the draft this year being shallower and all the compromisation like we talked about, is it a chance to start stocking up those points and moving into next year and starting to work around those instead of just trying to get players out of this draft?
My read at the moment is I wouldn't be caring too much about the points just yet for next year. I mean, I wouldn't mind trading into next year just because I think the class will be better. But like, I don't think the points, I'm not too worried about the points. I don't think any of them are like going top end. Like Carlton, that makes sense why they're, they've got Walker, who's probably 1 or 2 at the moment. Port Adelaide's tried to get Dougie Cochran onto their books, which is yet again pretty high up. Carlton's got Dean this year, so they've got to play with points. I don't think, unless their years go particularly well, I think they're, I don't think it's too bad for us. 2027 is an interesting one as well, though, because with Tassie coming in, I think the top end talent of that draft is looking really good already. There's been quite a fair bit. I think there's been a few people talking about it. I think there's been some really good. They had the under-16s, I think it was the other day, and that looks decent. It's just going to be, I think that class is going to be a bit more interesting. I think Tassie might get a bit lucky with that, though they have to make trades. But yeah, I don't hate the idea of trading out this draft, to be fair, unless we move up and get some of those guys that are a bit more. There's a few players, like there's always interesting prospects in these drafts, and there's always going to be great players coming from drafts. And there's interesting players around where we are that, could develop into something special. But I just think it's, you take the risks and the punts in these ones. And I think next year's for me, I like. But if we moved up, or there's a few people I like around our point, but I'm not that in love with this draft, as you can tell.
I can definitely tell. Give us a really, really quick, a sentence each, McCartney, Grant and Harris. What sort of players are they? I don't know. I know Harris is a midfielder, but the other two I'm not exactly sure. I think Grant's a winger potentially. But
yeah, I think McCartney was a 40, got 2 goals, I think it was, in the one recently.
Key forward?
Key forward size, yeah. He was, I think he's probably the one with the most upside for me. Harris played for Calder, and I think he had a couple of really good games. Was it Calder or Western? I think it was Calder. And he had a couple of really high possession games as a underager for them. So I think he's got a little something, but yet again, I don't think he's going to be near the top of the class. So I think we're pretty safe in that. And Grant, I haven't heard as much about or seen as much about personally. I don't think he's getting talked about in the same breath as the others. Harris, I think, is a good prospect. McCartney will get to someone, is my strong feeling. We'll see how they develop over next year, though. That can change.
When does McCartney have to nominate where he goes by? I mean, does it feel like we're going to be able to get him in as part of our father-son, or do you reckon he's going to pick the Swans?
It depends on how we go, I think, is part of it. But, McCartney, it would be a real shame to not see him come to us. Blakey was a real shame to not see him come to us, in fairness. You've got a lot of videos of him as, a kid, training with some of the guys in the early days, and because of the academies, he gets there. And it seems a bit of a joke for us where our, father-sons have been going to academies and getting up to other clubs. So it would really annoy me if McCartney did. And I think he's one that's got really good upside for us.
Yeah, well, look, let's hope. When do they have to nominate it by? Do you know? Is it
no specific time? I think it's before the draft. It's just before the draft. I don't think he won't call it until later, I think. It won't be to the end of the year.
Yeah. All right. This is the last Brighton Isles question. He loves asking a lot of questions. I have to try and pick the best ones but share them around. So, Brighton, you're lucky you got 3 questions, mate, all right? Out of all 3 of May, Jones or Frost, which mature age defender would you say North should target? We know your thoughts on May. That is a no from you, I believe, when we've talked in the past. Liam Jones is a free agent now. He's got been delisted, 34 years old. If it was a couple of years ago, this is someone that I'd be like, absolutely, let's go and do it. But 1 year Liam Jones doesn't make me feel that bad just in case. But there's Frost out there too. Would you look or consider someone like that coming into the list, or does Aiden Core sort of feel that veteran defender role who is aging?
It's a tough one. List spots are valuable to us right now. And there's players that we still have to delist, and, you've got a few people sitting there, and it's bringing one of those guys in. Is it worth the, delisting of someone else, essentially? Out of those guys, I listened to, obviously, the show with Chief, and I think he had a really, really good take on May, so I'll go with him on May. I think it's fairly reasonable what he was saying. For me, probably Jones more than Frost, but that being said, I don't mind the idea of a stopgap, but I wouldn't want a 2-year contract on him. I wouldn't.
No.
long term or anything. And it would be
You could steal me on Jones for 1 year, I reckon.
yeah, and it's just purely I want someone because we will improve if we can get a big stopper to cover off what until Dawson gets there. Dawson or Whitlock, they could both be. I think Whitlock's a bit more versatile, but Dawson
More of
I
an
think
interceptor, I feel like he is.
Yeah, but Dawson is such a big hulking figure. He could be a real big stopper. And there's like so many of these key forwards coming through that are that big size that I think Dawson can compete exceptionally well with. So let's see how that goes in the future. I mean, Dawson's the one that, for me, if Dawson, my biggest hope for this offseason is that Dawson comes through. If Dawson comes through, we won't be thinking about what's happened. It's a huge hole, a huge gap covered, and it'll be massive. But I think he's still quite young and learning the game.
Ben Hill on Facebook, if Petrarca chooses the Crows, even though we know now it's looking more like the Suns, do we think North can jump in for Butts in a 3-team deal? Like Tractor Crows, Butts to North, pick 14 / 22, and one of Simpkin or Powell to the Ds? Or do we think they just do 14 and Butts to the Ds and replace May? So obviously we know Petrarca's not going there now. The reason I read out this question, do you think there's any way we could get involved in a 3-team deal for a Butts, or is this a bit of a pipe dream now for Butts, which is sort of starting to feel like?
I mean, it sounds like he'll stay there. I mean, like there is like Butts for like pick 22 gets, Archie potentially to Adelaide as well, because Adelaide needs Archie. Archie, they've got pick 14, which seems too high. Their next pick is 44 they were talking about, which is too deep, so that might sit in that spot for them. So, but that being said, you need a situation where, Adelaide have Butts' depth, and he's a very, they don't want to let him go, obviously. But if we gave up a 20, one of our picks for Butts, and they move it on to Archie, I think that could be a win for all clubs, personally. Brizzy gets that 20 pick, helps him pay off for Annabelle. We get, Butts and Archie there. I think that works. But there's stuff that you can do, but Adelaide seems fairly intent on keeping Butts. I don't think it would be unless they were a bit, unless we could put that offer forward, but I'm not sure. I think Adelaide's pretty stern wanting to keep him, and it sounds like he's happy to re-sign and to try to work his way back into that best 22.
Okay. Brad Jamison on Facebook, thoughts on chasing Clary if we can get him cheap enough? If Simkin wants out and the Ds are willing to pay salary, we could save some money and bring in a much better player in a position of need inside mid. Allows us to rest Parker Ford more as well and prolong whatever good footy he has left. I know that Clayton Oliver's probably not picking to go to North Melbourne. I think there's other clubs who are better than us, desperate enough to go after a Clayton Oliver, who I still think can be a good player. Is there a world you would want us to ask the question about him?
No. I mean, you'll get him super cheap, or by super cheap.
If we're after a Windhager, does this... And this is a hypothetical here. If we're after a Windhager, clearly we see that there's room for a midfielder who's very big, very defensive. You don't think that Clary could potentially do that for us if the Ds are going to pay half his salary?
No, I don't think he's enough of an adult, to be fair. I just think, you saw the footage, obviously. I mean, it's not the nicest of situations, and it's, the reporters in that situation are pretty yuck. But when a club's willing to trade you, essentially, and pay $700,000 of your $1.1 million for the next 5 years. There's a reason
for it, isn't there? Yeah.
There's a reason they don't want you. Yeah. And for a club like North, who's trying to develop a culture, trying to develop these players around, to bring in someone like that, I think a club like a Geelong where you've got really good senior heads around, a club like an Adelaide where Adelaide, you're one piece away from potentially being that. Championship side or premiership side, yes, you can argue it there. I don't think we can make that argument. I wouldn't want to touch him.
That's fair. I guess there's always the thought of what if, but if we go and pick up,
great mates with Jai, by the way. Those two are really close.
Oh, fantastic! Well, we can get them together, get you Hagen in the door, and have a really good off-season party. That'd be a fantastic time. All right, only a couple more questions here, then we're going to get on to a couple of different topics and try not to make this one go too long. John Bauer again, another good question from him here. Should we throw every dollar and decent pick we have at Jed Walter? He's everything we need and getting pushed further and further back at Gold Coast. 6 years and 1.5 a year type offer. It is interesting with King obviously being their dominant forward up there and them chasing Curnow and Ugle-Hagan pretty heavily. Is there a lack of faith in Jed Walter out up there, or is he not coming on quite as quick as they would like because they see themselves competing quicker? We wanted him in that draft, and I think we bid on him, I believe, if I remember correctly. Do you think it's worth going after something like that? Could you see in some hypothetical world that is anything to go off there from John?
Yeah, I wouldn't. I would absolutely make a massive play on him. I just don't think he gets to us. He's someone that I would absolutely go all in. Like I was saying that of Cadman 2 years ago. Yeah. Now he's coming through. You get those situations. But Walter is definitely someone I'd be making a massive play on. I don't see how we get it done with him coming to us at the moment. Like Carlton, part of the it's bizarre that they're going after Ugle-Hagan so much for me. But Curnow, essentially, Carlton was saying if there was rumours if Curnow goes there, they could get a Walter back. And at that stage, Gold Coast is no, we're not moving off Walter. So they do have faith in him. I do agree with you. I think now that they've got, King, it'll be Ugle-Hagan, Ethan Reid, Walter's.
It's got to be Ethan Reid, yeah.
Yeah, he's going to be a freak as well, that guy. They are getting pushed back, but I think he's. I would absolutely make a huge play on him and throw everything at him, almost the Tom Boyd situation that the Dogs did. I don't see that one happening. Tom Boyd, though, I said I didn't see happening either, but they managed to get that out from him. So if we could do that offer, I wouldn't complain.
We'll bunch a few together here because they all kind of come along the same thing. But C.McCormack on Instagram and the other one here, Christo Sapots. That every time that I don't know if it's Chris or Christo, but every time that Chris here comments, I always screw up the handle. So I'm so sorry because I know I've read out a few of your questions before. That's public school education.
What did you read?
Guys.
This is an Olympic sport. The names.
Well, yeah, you saw my brain just like a 404 error sort of thing just then. But any names we should go after that we haven't been linked to, and C.McCormack, realistic dream targets. Anyone else out there that we haven't really been talked about? I mean, Flanders is out there now, something you brought up before, but looks like the Saints, the D's. Ainsworth from the Suns as well, now talking about leaving. Anyone else, those guys, anyone else out there that you think is realistic but would also be a really good get for us out there? Anything you're sniffing?
Not currently. It's a bit, a Sarong I think is a really good target. People want to a couple of people want us to go after a Huswaite as well, and Scrimshaw they've talked about as well from Hawthorn. Obviously with Zane.
Just go raid Box Hill.
That's pretty much Box Hill's been a very good, successful program, and I think those kind of guys are the ones that we could be looking at. Scrimshaw is still signed on for a year, but he can be that key position size as well, and potentially a stopgap. And I think he does it better than probably a few of the other names mentioned. Those are the kind of players I'd be looking at. You try to get those guys that are deeper. Gold Coast is still fairly cheap list, which is why they can bring in people on bigger money. Not hugely at the moment. I think Scrimshaw would be a little watch for us, just a little watch. But other than that, I think, I'm curious what other names will pop up, but I don't think there's a huge amount out there for us. I think it's more going to be trading picks that you'll see from us.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, because I really want to believe and I really want to hope that something else is going to pop up, but I'm sure it will over the trade period. I mean, look, free agency's open today, trades open on Monday, I believe, and we've got a couple of weeks that they can do all that sort of stuff in. So every day we're going to be getting rumours and all that sort of stuff. So let's just follow along and see. One player that I thought of that's out of favour at their club, even though their height maybe isn't quite as tall as I would like them for their position. But it was Ollie Henry from the Cats. I really like him as a player. I think even the prelim final last year when they played Brisbane, he was fantastic in that game. I think he's shown a lot of potential, not really getting in that team at the moment, especially if they are after a Kerno or something like that. Shannon Neal is clearly their option, and man, I would love Shannon Neal on us if we could have a player like that. Jez has obviously got a lot of years left in him. Ollie Henry, I think he was the one at the Pies, right? He moved down because he was too scared to be away from his brother. An hour car ride is very, very scary.
Horrendously far away.
You're right. I mean, look, I wouldn't have any clue about that. I don't live across a body of water from my family. But, regardless of him maybe being a child like that, I like him as a player, 23 years old. He's listed at 189 centimetres, but when I've seen him play, he seems to play a lot bigger than that. I know he's not your classic sort of key forward, but, I feel like it's semi-reasonable and not completely out of the question. He's not in favour there. He should want to play football. It feels like people who move to Geelong, or if they've got a brother at the football club, they're not moving even to play games. But that's a player that I really think – what if, I think it's semi-realistic, and I think that there's a spot there that he could play in. He doesn't play like a Zerha or a Curtis. He does play as a key forward type player for them, even though he's undersized, but he's very athletic. What do you, this is just one off the top of my head that I've thought about over the last couple of weeks. Give me your thoughts off the top of your head.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate the thought pattern. I mean, like, if we bring him in, we're moving Zane Dersma out essentially, and making his base. Like, I mean, Zane Dersma, who's the same role essentially. Like, you're getting, he's not getting games at the moment. We've got again, like, our lines don't look as bad as our lines aren't that bad. I don't think. Like, you look at the start of next year, we need someone to replace Darwin long term. I'm hoping that's Matt Whitlock. But the start of next year, you're going to have very clearly Larkey. Darling, Trimbath has to start next year. And you've got to try to sneak in a midfielder or two into one of the flanks. But otherwise, Curtis Bull are immediately locked in there. And JK was shown to be our small forward. How do you get in these other guys into that? Like, you'll have 5 on the bench. If you've got a forward on the bench, you're talking, Banch was starting to get into favour and get a few games. And then Zane Dersma's going to be getting games and he's going to be running through there. Parker's not going to be starting in the centre of the ground half the time.
I'm just looking at some numbers here. Sorry to jump in. Like, I just looked up like Dersma and Ollie Henry and that sort of stuff. It's funny, like obviously Dersma's a centimetre taller on the AFL website, but listed as medium forward compared to a key forward listing for Ollie Henry, even though he's 1 centimetre shorter. I don't know. I mean, Ollie Henry, 5 years in the league now? I mean, this year played 15 games, kicked 14 goals. But 2024 played 23 games, 2023 played 22, kicked 37 and 41 in that, kicked 21 from 15 and 22 for the Pies when he was there. On average, he's a goal kicker. I mean, he averaged about a goal a game, obviously this season, but I don't know. I think Ollie Henry would fit better than what Dersma will be able to offer over the next couple of years. And I know Dersma's potential is probably higher than Ollie Henry's is. I just don't see Dersma being that forward that we need. I don't see it, mate.
Yeah. I mean, from the Cats, like the other player obviously would be Jed Buse, who might be delisted as well. Like, he's another big body, older mid as well. But Ollie Henry, I see what you're saying with him. I just don't like. Forwards aren't who I'm chasing like at the moment. It's the defenders for me is where I'm looking more. And you'd have to pay 100%. Too much to get. Yeah, I think you'd have to pay too much to get an Ollie Henry across the line, to be honest, to us.
Yeah, okay. Looking at Jed Buse here, medium defender, 186, 31 years old. Yeah.
Emergency right side would come the finals.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, yeah, absolutely. He's a father-son. Yeah, I don't know. Does he really fit that profile, though? We probably need someone a bit bigger than him. I mean, he's just another sort of medium size. Like, if a Sarong or a Logue or even a Pink could probably play that sort of role. Even a McDonald can play a little bit defensive mid as well. Yeah, if you can play.
Windhager style, but he won't be the long-term solution or anything like that. No, I wouldn't take him again, but like these are the kind of players I'd be thinking.
Well, Geelong announced their delistings, didn't they?
But we've announced for like there's going to be
for sure.
More
I guess there's more to come, isn't there? Yeah. Okay. Well, look. If Ollie Henry runs up at North, you heard it here first on Further North Podcast, guys. But yeah, I don't know. I like the look. seeing his height on paper, it makes me a little bit underwhelmed. But watching him play, I'm like, man,
plays well.
him leading out of a goal square for us with his athleticism and his goal kicking ability, I just think it suits so much, and he's out of favour. Yeah, we might have to give up a little bit, but I completely agree with you. Like, those defenders are much more important to target right now. But I don't know, if a player like that, who I think can be really good, comes up, and there is a hole in that key forward spot, before Whitlock or someone comes on, and after a Darling sort of goes, I don't know. I'm just tossing it up. Anyway, there's my hypothetical for the
reasonable.
day. All right. 2 more things to talk about here before we head off. The Eagles have been given their assistance package, right? I'm just going to get it up here so I can read out everything correctly, and I'll just get you to sort of react to it here. An end of first round draft selection in the 2025 draft, currently selection 19, 4 additional rookie list spots for 26, 27, and 28. Off the top, how do you feel about this Eagles assistance package?
I mean, obviously they got a better deal than us, which is actually very annoying for a side.
What did we get again? Remind me.
We got end of second and third rounder. I think it was start potentially, so it could be similar to that.
We had to trade them?
We had to trade them, and we've got 2 extra rookie spots, which we've had now since 2022, I think
it's been 3 years. Yeah, 3 years of that. Yeah.
So we've had 2. So they've got 4, and they've got 1 that they can keep. I mean, obviously the AFL gave it to them so they can give it to Brisbane. So Brisbane can use it for, or can, get it
use
for
Starcevich.
Yeah, so that they don't have to dilute their talent coming. They dilute their pick for Oscar Rowan. So, yeah, I mean, like, it does feel a bit yuck again. Like, the AFL seems to be happier to give them a better deal than they gave us, I think. I mean, we got Tucker and Logan. They're getting a Starcevich, who's 2-time premiership player and extremely important member, though. He's obviously had another concussion, the poor fellow, in the grand final, which is an ongoing issue for him as well, which there is probably a bit of caution for him now, or a bit more caution. But yeah, no, that was I was very unhappy when I heard that. It just seems like, the AFL doesn't, they don't want to see West Coast be bad. They're not as caring to see if we're bad or not.
Well, West Coast make money, mate, and AFL loves money. And
they do love money.
They do love money, and they do not love the North Melbourne Football Club. I mean, no other fan in the league right now can say they've nearly seen their club relocated twice this century. So that is such a fun time. Tasmania has been given their picks and all of their help that's going to happen when they come into the league. I'm going to read it out here, and you're going to react to it, Joel. The Devils will be handed pick number 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, and 13, and the first selection of each subsequent round in their first draft, which is set to be in 2027. 4 of those picks, 5, 7, 11, and 13, come with a caveat that they must be traded. How do you feel about that? It feels like a lot. I don't remember what. I remember I saw the Gold Coast and what they got not that long ago, and it did feel very similar to that, though. I don't feel like they've done much different here. I can't remember if the Gold Coast had picks they had to trade, though.
Gold Coast did not. They also had the mini draft as well, where they could get the pre-listed players. I think that was O'Meara in one of them. Jack Martin was one of those, and so was Hogan, actually. He was the second one for that, which Melbourne took. Fascinating to see. But, like, the other thing, like, for me, like, that makes about right. I mean, the trading sort of makes sense, like, because Gold Coast made a lot of mistakes in their development, which is why it took them so long. Giants, like, there's, I forgot who did the documentary series. I should probably look at them again. But they were talking about the expansion clubs and all the clubs and how they were formed and what they've done and come in. And it was actually really fascinating because Giants sort of knew they were going to be bad for a while, but we're happy to go down a certain pathway. Tassie's going to be interesting. I think that's about right. The big thing for them, though, that we should add to this is the $5 million sign-on bonus add-in, which is going to be interesting. I mean, a lot of people obviously are talking about Kirch. I tend to agree with you. I don't think, like, they'll target him, but I tend to think you'll see the people that you would offer that to, though, it's like the top clubs would be the ones that you'd be going after, like your Dacos or your
that was Darcy. The one that was put on Footy Furnace was, what was it, 1.5 or 2? Was it 2.5 a year for Dacos or something on an 8-year deal, or $2 million a year for 8 years with a $2.5 million signing bonus or something along those lines. I think it maybe was a little bit more than that. just insane stuff. I mean, it was $2.5 million a year for 8 years and a $3 million signing bonus and the captaincy. That's what potentially they could offer him with their cap flexibility. So the first year in the league, he would make $5.5 million, which is just crazy stuff. But yeah, look, it's very interesting. And look, I'll always have a soft spot for Tassie. They're going to be my second team. I'm not going to be as passionate about them as North because I've followed this club my whole life. But well, don't you worry, man. And trust me, now I've got this platform, everyone will hold me accountable to that. I have to go incognito mode when I'm at the Tassie games next year or next couple of years. But no, seriously, like, look, I'll love Tassie when they're here, and I'm going to want Tassie to win every single game except for the games against North Melbourne. Basically, that's going to be my thing. But I don't think they're going to come after Kirch. I'm going to stick to this for ever and a day. He's a loyal man. The Tassie kids are built different. I don't think kids are going to run home. But you're right. It is those big clubs, and that would make the league a better place because the free agency is just a way to fast track the best players out of the small clubs to the big ones, right? The trade system and nominating clubs is that as well. So hopefully they go absolutely balls to the wall to some of the big clubs, take some of their talent, and the league gets a little bit more even. I think that'd be best for everybody.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, like, they will come after Kirch because it just makes too much sense for them not to. I think Kirch will stay. I just got that feeling that he would stay. But the players, I mean, like, hopefully I think they'll shake a couple of the big ones out. Like, you didn't go after, like, when Gold Coast came in, Ablett was the obvious target.
Yeah.
And like, I think
no one ever thought he would leave too, especially being a father-son.
Yeah. I mean, but that's going to be the same with obviously Dacos, but like, Ashcrofts, I'd be right after one of those. A Cadman or a Darcy, I'd be right after those.
Yeah.
Those would be the players I'd be going after first. Like, if I'm trying to get a big fish across, they're the ones I'm targeting. I'm not targeting, unless Kirch has a ridiculously good year this year and next year, which is also a potential may have. Those would be the first ones I'd be targeting.
Yeah, wow. It's going to be so interesting in a couple of years' time when all this stuff comes around. But hey, let's see if we can sneak a cheeky flag before then, mate, and then we can lock Kirch away for a while. You've locked finals for next year, and then the year after, subsequently grand final, I believe. So,
jeez, this is expanding.
Well, that's what we do here on the podcast. We go big.
We go big
or go to bed, which I might do very, very soon because it's quite late on the Friday night. All right, look, this will probably be out Saturday night, Sunday morning, I reckon. I don't know if I might drop a little bit about the women's game into this podcast after tomorrow. If not, we'll talk about it on the next podcast because they are roaring and I want to keep up to date with everything that they're doing. So anyway, look, we'll park it there for now. Thank you to everyone for your questions. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe, like the video, give us the comments down below, let you know about all our opinions and what you think about them. It's always interesting to see what people think, and see what the North community is feeling. Facebook, Instagram, all the social medias, you know where it is at. Stay locked here. Joel is going to be here all through Trade and Free Agency. This is his time to shine. It's his podcast over the next couple of months. I'm just on the back burner, pulling the strings and doing all the dirty work. So this is your world, Joel. We're just living in it, mate. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me again, Josh. Good fun.
All right, mate. Chat to you soon.
Top 8.
Lock.
Cheers.